For most of us, the idea of having to abide by national stay-at-home order was something unthinkable just a few months ago, but that has now become our reality. For many adults, it means working from home, if possible, cooking a lot more, reading, and then binge watching our favorite movies and series. But for children, it can be quite different. Often with much higher energy levels and social needs, staying at home for weeks on end with limited social interaction can have adverse effects. Now, some kids are lucky with siblings at home to play with. They can get very creative to fill the time. Look at these two, locked in their city apartment for weeks now. 11-year-old Javon Robles and his 13-year-old sister Anais have completely improvised an entire murder mystery series on their iPhones.
The police had failed Jivan, so had the fortune teller. The police had failed Jivan, so had the fortune teller. They couldn't tell him who was after him. So the only thing he could do was make himself some lamb chops.
They've reached hundreds of viewers per episode while keeping their sanity and creativity skills alive under lockdown. But what about the kids that don't have siblings or the technological resources to pass the time? How much do they suffer from loneliness and the suppression of that boundless energy? Here to talk about that is psychologist and trauma specialist Dr. Anjhula Mya Singh Bais in Kuala Lumpur. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Anjhula. I mean, I'd imagine that little clip there is exactly what you smile at. Young siblings getting along and getting creative, to pass the time together. Is that the kind of thing you would recommend parents encourage their kids to do?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. But what I would also say is, even in non-COVID times, when the question is, how many children should we have? Should I have one child? Should I give it a sibling? There's a lot of research that shows, yes, an only child socialization may be different, but it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. In fact, an only child can actually be more creative. We should actually take a cue from kids. They're quite innovative, right? Turning a old blanket into a tent, a carpet all of a sudden is a magic carpet. A broom is like taking you to a Harry Potter world. So I would definitely recommend activities, but just remember that children, they have different cognitive ability levels than adults who can usually verbalize what's going on. So if you find a child acting out, it's good to sit them down and have a conversation because that's a means of expressing themselves.
Right, let's talk about those kids then. I mean, I've heard about, children who are really actually struggling psychologically to the point that their personalities are actually turning, a bit aggressive. And they're changing a little bit. In a country like Italy, some of these kids have now been indoors for 4 weeks. They haven't seen other kids now for weeks. Do you worry, though, about potential long-term effects that this could have on those children, or are they resilient enough that they'll basically, return to normal as soon as this lockdown is over?
Now, obviously, mental health is not a one-size-fits-all, but generally speaking, children have high resiliency levels, higher than adults. They're sort of more agile and adaptable. So, for example, if a child falls off a horse, he or she will get back on the horse, whereas an adult will be like, I broke my arm, what does that mean for insurance, so on and so forth. So in terms of resiliency, for the most part, it should be okay. But one thing I would stress is that a lot of people are saying COVID is causing XYZ sort of issues, whether it's anxiety or anger. I would actually say what's more accurate is that it's exacerbating underlying conditions that already exist. So if a child, tends to be more introverted versus extroverted, or has trouble relating to peers, or maybe had a bit of an anger management issue, then these things are definitely going to be heightened by COVID, but it's not creating it. And again, it's important to have these conversations. When children are feeling angry or acting out, it's, behind anger is usually fear or boredom. If you can't go outside, or if, there's not technology, we can improvise by making music, by expelling that energy and, dancing around in the kitchen. If you can simulate, take your child to work day where they can pretend to be an assistant and get a glimpse into your own life. There's hashtags out there, learning to play, indoor
Right.
activities, which can be very helpful for parents.
Parents could become playmates at their best. Okay, Anjhula, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. We really appreciate it.